In Peru, preparations for the protests against Dina Boluarte on July the 28th are moving forward. On Thursday, a reception in honor of the participants of the Russia-Africa Summit, President Vladimir Putin said that Russia and African countries are calling for the formation of a just multipolar world order based on the principles of equality of countries. Niger's army has declared allegiance to the defense and security forces that overthrew President Mohamed Bazoum, according to a statement signed by the Abdul Siddiqui Issa, the Army Chief of Staff. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll be with the news. Stay with us. In Peru, preparations for the protests against Dina Boluarte on July the 28th are moving forward. Social organizations from the regions of Puno arrived in Lima to participate in the greater mobilizations, as well as the relatives of the victims of Juliaca, in order to demand justice. While in the province of Chiclayo, the regional unitary front of Lambayeque called a sit-in for Friday as a sign of protest. These acts are part of a third takeover of Lima in rejection of the Dina Boluarte administration, demanding the closure of the Congress of the Republic and the release of former President Pedro Castillo. In Ecuador, military and police found an arsenal of war weapons inside the Guayas #1 prison, also known as Penitenciaría del Litoral, or La Penny, located in the city of Guayaquil. The intervention at the prison, most dangerous and populous in the country, began early this week to take control of the facility following a riot that started on Saturday. The entry of the uniformed officers came after the South American country's president, Guillermo Lasso, declared a 60-day state of emergency in all prisons. Some of the weapons were found hidden in the prison's wall. Uniformed agents also found 6 handmade explosive devices and 65 explosive gel blocks. The United Nations organization urged the government of Guatemala to guarantee the rights of peoples and to respect the will of voters participating in the electoral process. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, considered that attempts to weaken the electoral process in Guatemala could hinder the respect for the will of the voter. For his part, the Secretary General of the organization, Antonio Guterres, urged the Guatemalan authorities to assure the independence of powers, guaranteeing that the Supreme Electoral Court and the Citizens Registry work without interference. The people of Venezuela remain mobilized to ratify their support to President Nicolás Maduro. From the western state of Trujillo, the base of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, as well as social and popular organizations, were deployed in the town of Escuque, where they defend the achievements reached by the revolution, while assuring to defend the political organizations from its electoral movements. In parallel, the militancy of the state of Mérida mobilized under the slogan "From Bolívar to Chávez" to support Maduro in the midst of the side political policy that Washington maintains against the Venezuelan people. The so-called Third Malón de la Paz continues in Argentina, in which social movements, including indigenous peoples, are marching from Jujuy to the capital, Buenos Aires, to denounce the provincial constitutional reform that threatens their territories. It is expected that on Thursday they will advance through the section of Santa Maria in the province of Catamarca, to be later received in Tafí del Valle by the Brothers of the United Nations Program for the Development of Tucumán. In Haiti, a non-governmental organization denounced on Wednesday that the wave of violence has left a record of 600 murdered and 271 kidnappings between January and June 2023. The Defensores Plus collective criticized the administration of Prime Minister Ariel Henry who has been in power since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse 2 years ago. The group also points out that Henry failed to keep his promise and plunged the nation into a state of poverty, insecurity, and vulnerability. In this sense, the human rights group denounced that criminal groups use violence as a weapon against women and girls in the confrontations that have increased in the Caribbean country. Let's take a very short break, but remember you can now follow us on Artículo acá on teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats and news updates and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back From the South. On Thursday, at a reception in honor of the participants of the Russia-Africa Summit, President Vladimir Putin said that Russia and African countries are calling for the formation of just multipolar world order based on the principles of equality of countries. Putin said Russia will continue to make a real contribution to resolving current crisis and preventing new hotbeds of tensions in the continent, and will also help in the fight against terrorism and extremism, against pandemics and famine, in addressing issues of environmental, food, and information security.
A paradoxical situation is emerging. On the one hand, Western countries are obstructing supplies of our grain and fertilizers. On the other hand, I will say frankly, they hypocritically accuse us of the current crisis situation on the world food market. Russia's share of the world wheat market is 20%, while Ukraine has less than 5%. This means that Russia makes a significant contribution to global food security, and the country is a solid, responsible international supplier of agricultural products. Our country will continue to support states and regions in need, including with its humanitarian supplies. We are endeavoring to participate actively in shaping a more equitable system of resource allocation.
Developing ties with African countries is one of the imperable priorities of the Russian Federation, the Russian President Putin told his Ugandan counterpart on Thursday. The Ugandan president invited Russia to take part in the exploration of oil in East Africa. For his part, President Putin has been holding bilateral meetings with African leaders on the sidelines of the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg. The Russian leader has built the two-day summit that opened on Thursday as a major event that will help bolster ties with the continents of 1.3 billion people that is increasingly assertive on the global stage.
This forum is very important for us. The comprehensive development of ties with African countries in politics, in the field of security, in the trade and economic and humanitarian spheres is one of the invariable priorities of Russian foreign policy, and Uganda is certainly among Russia's key partners on the African continent.
Propose new areas, like for instance, the area of refinery and exploration of for petroleum products. We've got some little oil which we want to export as crude, but also refine for the East African market. But Russian companies can also take part in exploration for more oil in our area. Production is high, but we are still producing raw materials.
Excellency, allow me to personally state that Zimbabwe is in solidarity with the Russian Federation in your country's special military operation in the Ukraine. As current chair of the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme, the KPC, Zimbabwe unreservedly condemns the unjustified and vindictive ban on the sale of Russian diamonds on the world market.
The Russian military claimed on Thursday that Ukrainian armed forces suffered heavy losses during an offensive attempt in Zaporizhia. Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson Igor Konashenko said during his daily briefing on Thursday that Ukraine engaged 3 battle-on tactical groups from the strategic reserve brigades in the field offensive in the south of the country.
In the Zaporizhia direction, the enemy didn't conduct any active actions overnight, and restoring combat capability after the offensive of the Ukrainian armed forces north of the settlement of Robotyne in the Zaporizhia region, in which up to 3 battalion tactical groups from the strategic reserve brigades were involved, failed, and the enemy suffered heavy losses. Enemy losses per day in these directions amounted to more than 280 Ukrainian servicemen, 25 tanks, 10 infantry fighting vehicles, 3 armored combat vehicles, 2 vehicles, a Shakes-made RM-17 Vampire multiple rocket launcher, as well as 2 howitzers FH-70 made in the UK. The Russian armed forces delivered concentrated strikes with long-range air and sea-based high-precision weapons against airfields, control and deployment centers of the Ukrainian armed forces, assembly shops and storage sites for main boats, as well as missiles, weapons and military equipment received from European countries and the United States. The target has been reached. All assigned objects are hit.
In Greece, firefighters rose to tackle forest fires and renewed winds. Greek firefighters rushed on Thursday to quell deadly wildfires that have ravaged the country for the past 2 weeks before strong winds forecast that included to the place on Thursday. Hundreds of firefighters backed by the European Union reinforcement were battling to contain blaze in the islands of Rhodos, Corfu and Evia, in addition to the new front that broke out on Wednesday in central Greece. Pakistan, at least 11 people died due to heavy rains and floods over the last 24 hours, bringing the total deaths to 168 since the start of the monsoon season on June the 25th. The National Disaster Management Authority reported that among the victims there are 5 children from different areas of the country. According to the agency, the northwestern province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has been the most affected by the rains. Pakistan Meteorological Department warned on Thursday that strong monsoon activity is likely to continue in the northern and central parts of the country for the next 3 days. In Panama, the canal reduces the number of daily vessels transiting privately and indefinitely due to the drought affecting the waterways flows. The Panama Canal Authority, Ricardo Vasquez, indicated that measures respond to the need to minimize the probabilities of additional drought in the coming weeks due to the drought that affects its basin. He added that this measure might be adjusted according to the evolution of the situation. It is worth mentioning that about 3% of the world trade passes through the Panama Canal, which represents a daily average of 35 to 36 vessels. Let's take our last break, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you will be able to watch our interviews, top stories, special broadcasts, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We'll find us our break. Don't go away. Welcome back. The Niger Army has declared allegiances to the Defense and Security Forces that overthrew President Mohamed Bazoum, according to a statement signed by Abdul Syuku Issa, the Army Chief of Staff. Members of the Presidential Guard had seen Bazoum inside the Presidential Palace in the capital early on Wednesday. In a statement broadcast later on national television, Colonel Major Amadou Obramed, spokesperson for a group calling itself the National Council for the Safeguarding of Niger, said the country's borders have been closed, a nationwide curfew has been established, and all institutions of the country are also suspended. On Thursday, speaking at the Russia-Africa Summit being held in St. Petersburg, African Union President and Comoros President Saliad Assoumani said that he condemns the recent coup attempt in Niger and urged for the release of President Bazoum and his family.
Joined the African Union in a communique condemning what has happened in Niger and recommending the restoration of constitutional order and release of President Bazoum and his family.
China has also stated it was closely following the situation in Niger. This was stated by the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning at a daily news briefing.
We are closely following the development of the situation in Niger. We also know that a relevant statement made by the African Union and the Economic Community of West African States. We call on the relevant parties in Niger to act in fundamental interests of the country and its people, resolve their differences peacefully through dialogue, restore normal order as soon as possible, and safeguard the country's overall picture of peace, stability, and development.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres demanded the release of President Bazoum for Niger following a coup in the country.
Yesterday I spoke with President Bazoum to express our solidarity. Today I do want to address directly those who are detaining him. Release President Bazoum immediately and without preconditions.
On Thursday, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Indonesian President Joko Widodo in Chengdu, capital city of southwest China's Sichuan province, where the 31st International University Sport Federation Summer World University Games will take place. Widodo will be among the foreign leaders and senior officials to attend the opening ceremony of the Chengdu University. At the meeting, she recalled that he and Widodo jointly opened a new chamber in building a China-Indonesia community with a shared future last year. In Syria, at least 6 people were killed and 32 others were wounded after a powerful explosion in a neighborhood south of Damascus. The incident occurred due to the explosion of a motorcycle near the public cap in the Sayeda Saida neighborhood. A group of law enforcement officers, Muslim Lebanese, were deployed at the entrance of a neighborhood to reinforce security in the area. The authorities report that investigations are underway to find those responsible for the attack, and they also presume that a terrorist group Daesh is behind the attack. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also see us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.